talking today about recording drums with superstar drum extraordinaire tuner Danny, the Dynamite drum tuner Massey. What are your philosophies on tuning drums? Like, what's your approach?
Well, what I did today is I brought with me a Ludwig Classic Maple small kit and the tune bot, and the heads I use on these are Evans hydraulic on the top and the Remo Ebony's on the bottom. A kit that has one-ply heads, thin heads, and is loud and big and open. Can just be a monster to get to sound good, and that takes a lot of work. I've also found too that with marketing of drum sets in the commercial market doesn't match well with what people think in terms of how they want drums to sound.
Right.
Because a great big drum, or a really long bass drum, or really deep toms, the depth of the tom determines how much it resonates. So many people want these tight sounding drums that sound powerful and punchy, but what looks cool on stage are these gigantic shells. Well, they work against each other.
Absolutely.
The easiest drums to tune and get to sound punchy are going to be shallow and small diameters.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why you see so many jazz drummers and experienced drummers go after kits that have smaller toms and even smaller bass drums. The basic principle of tuning a drum is it's a membrane, okay? And you want it to have, you want it to be evenly tensioned so that when you hit the drum in the center, you have the same amount of tension all the way around the lugs.
Right.
So that when it makes a sound, it all travels in one direction at the same rate.
Okay.
When you do it by ear, it's much more difficult than when you use a tuning bot, which I'll talk about more in a minute. But a lot of people just had to learn from trial and error.
Sure.
You want to always start with the lowest drum in your kit, and the lowest tom. That's going to govern.
Which, that's great information right there. He'd pointed that out to me, and I'd never considered that. I'd always done exactly the opposite. Started with my top tom and went down. And maybe that's why my 14-inch tom has always been so difficult for me to tune, is because I just sequentially just went top to bottom. But that's
because you're trying to get the lowest. Most people want the lowest note they can get it out of the drum and have it make one clear note with no distortion. And if you start with the small toms and get them sounding great, you can get over here and I can't tune the drum low enough to make the increment correct.
Right.
Without it vibrating. So I would always start with the floor tom first, and I like my drums to resonate quite a bit.
Me too.
So good. So I tune the top head and bottom head at the same tension, and that's the recipe for that. I don't use them. The only time I use any kind of dampening is on larger toms like this one. I'll use a moon gel just to calm it down a little bit. Otherwise, on the toms and the snare drum, I play wide open.
Right.
And having said that, the method of tuning is going to depend quite a bit upon what kind of music you want to play and how you want the drums to sound and what heads you get. And if you're fighting with tuning the drums and you just started, you're just going to have to experiment a whole lot. But if you do go out and check out a tune bot, they're great because you can go on Overtone Labs website, punch in what size drums you have. It'll give you various recommended tunings of how you can try. If you want lower resonance, you can tune the drums the resonant head at either higher or lower pitch than top head, and they do all the math for you there and tell you exactly what frequency to tune the drum to make that happen.
One of the things too I just wanted to add or point out is drum tuning is it can be really subjective as well, because it's not like like a guitar, like your starting point is A440 or whatever, whereas there's an actual, everybody in the band has to be in tune or whatever. With drums though, the pitches can really they could actually be
not even be
sympathetic to the notes or not,
in between notes.
Right. So that's another. What's your philosophy or thoughts on that?
Great question. Me being pretty much strictly a drummer and not being a person that has much talent in terms of melody or harmony, I've never until recently thought in terms of drums as what note they make.
Right.
That's kind of a new idea to me. I was just like, what sounds good? I would listen to records, I'd listen to Zeppelin, I'd listen to people I liked and try to figure out how they got that sound.
Right.
And then I would just pretty much fight with it through different types of head, different types of dampening. The real question should be, what note do you want that musical instrument to make?
Yeah.
And because each one of these is a musical instrument, and each one of them has a fundamental note. And if you go on, there's various ways to get that information, but basically the circumference of the drum determines its fundamental note. And you can get on the TuneBot website and you can look and see, I have a 10-inch tom, what's its fundamental note? And then the TuneBot will tell you, how sound's measured obviously in frequencies.
Right.
It'll tell you what frequency to tune each one of these lugs to, so that the fundamental note equals the actual note, be it A or a D or a G or whatever. that you want the drum to be. So you can tune drums 2 notes, and you can actually model the tuning after like a power chord.
Right, sure,
Or
sure.
like a called post tuning, like you would hear
Right.
like a trumpet play at the beginning of a horse race.
Right.
Depending on how many drums you have.
Are we too geeky, man? Because we are like, I see us both like, and I'm just like, oh yeah, but it's
Yeah.
killer. It's like, I'm like, this is such great information, and this is awesome.
We're
and like,
nerds.